Welcome to Project Eternity. As we move towards a new evolution of humanity, we need to bring a different kind of spiritual wisdom for businesses to innovate the future. And it requires merging science and spirituality together and align it with the forces of the universe. Steve Jobs understood the beauty of merging multiple disciplines together. Steve Jobs also invested in a lot of yogic wisdom in India in his younger years. Project Eternity is an organization that brings the world that we see and the world that we don't, merges that wisdom and helps business to understand the oneness in the universe and be aligned with the energies. It is an application-based model. Now, let's take a look at us. We are an unhappy generation. The rise of unhappiness is nothing but the fact that we hide and mask our problems because we are disconnected from ourself, our soul, and the energies of consciousness. We think by popping pills we will make our problems go away, but later realizing that after the effects are gone, we are left as prisoners of our own self. This happens when we have no self-reflection because we can't see the whole. We do not know how much our actions matter and how much the consequences are. We think we are nothing but a species of chance. Nothing can be far from the truth. If only Adam was self-aware enough to lift up his finger and touch the consciousness of God, life would be different. Today, we stand at a very interesting precipice of time where we can either self-destruct or find a new way. If we don't, the problems will keep on repeating and the cycle will continue forever. Project Eternity is the program where we build a new model of consciousness for businesses and people to write a new narrative. COVID changed the entire old model and ushered a new wave of evolution. It was a wake-up call. COVID changed the entire model of our thinking. We saw extremes and paradoxes. We understood the value of freedom of thought. We also saw dichotomies and indifference among people. Whatever may it be, we can agree about one thing, that we are living in an age of technology, an age of AI, where AI will automate objective tasks, but to innovate the future, we will need subjectivity. Are we going to build a future like this, or perhaps like this, or perhaps go in search of planets, or merge with digital reality and transhumanism, or live in dystopia? The future is not written. We have to collectively write it. But to move towards the future, there is a need for us to study the past. We have to ask tough questions. Why did we end up here at the first place? To move forward, we have to study the power of wisdom left to us by our ancestors. Will that work? Yes. To jump higher, we go backwards first. That's where we come in. We teach exceptional wisdom of these highly evolved beings who encoded spiritual wisdom in temples to help us apply this to our lives, and so we can evolve in the right direction. Make no mistake, the post-COVID world is about automation and all about technology. It will shape our lives, societies, generations, and our existence. But that also brings us to a big problem. Technology is exponential, but human evolution is linear. That brings us to a major quandary that those who invent and perpetuate technology can and will impose their own ideas, ethics, values, and perspectives on the rest without even knowing the harm on the collective. That is why understanding spiritual wisdom and the art of being self aware is so fundamentally important. But we cannot go back to the old models. These old models are dead. We have to go back to basics. We have to ask, what is reality? Can we trust our eyes, our minds, our brains? Does this picture swirl when you look at it? How about now? Let's try something different. Focus on the black dot. Do you see the green circles moving? Now, focus on the green circle. You'll see there are no green circles at all. How did this happen? Because our perception of reality is completely different. Our brains hallucinate this reality. Let's look at the biggest paradox of all. An atom consists mostly of empty space. Shouldn't we be asking the question, what is reality? Whatever we feel is solid and real is made up of empty space? This is such a paradox that every quantum physicist struggles with. It's baffling that we are DNA floating in consciousness, where an invisible force is expressing the reality through our DNA. We cannot understand all this with the current models at all. Even Einstein said the same thing, that leaps of innovation has happened with leaps of consciousness. We cannot look at things in a disconnected manner, but rather look at it from the archetypes and patterns. This is where the ancients understood and applied the different consciousness models to build structures that cannot be replicated by us at all. This is a moon-based calendaring system that tells us the time and date. So let's look at some applications of understanding this wisdom. Take a stalk and then put the moon phases, yellow being full moon, gray new moon. You can see the stock goes down during full moon and the price goes up during new moon. Imagine the power in this wisdom, not only in finance and stocks, but sales and marketing. Let's look at some more applications. There are more accidents that happen during full moon. Hospitals can augment their staff and ensure that patients are taken care when accidents happen. The same application exists in understanding when teens might have a suicide risk. There's so many applications and many of them come through the myths. The myth of Persephone is on the left. I suggest that you go through it. But it simply means Persephone, the spring maiden, who wants to blossom, is forced to go back to Hades, the winter or the dark world. The myth does not only talk about the movement of the seasons, they talk about how our psyche and our soul and the flow of consciousness also moves in these cycles. This is the ancient wisdom in churches. The woman in blue is psyche, our soul, our inside self. She's perennially unhappy because she doesn't want to go into the Hades. She does not see the butterfly at the top, and neither does she understand that she has to partner with Hermes or Mercury or our higher consciousness to evolve. This is the problem of humanity, that we do not understand these cycles. We want to perennially be in spring, but not understanding the consequences of being perennially in spring. We have to go back into our Hades all the time based on the cycles of consciousness. The problem is that this knowledge is not spoken about anymore. Rather, it has been replaced by modern psychology, which is all about the mind and the behavior of people. Worse is that pharmacology has taken a big stance in providing us the pills that we don't have to do anything, just pop pills and we are okay. Nothing is further from the truth. That's why we are such an unhappy race, because we are disconnected from ourself and the cycles of consciousness. When we study the soul, new frontiers are exposed. We can explore them for the next evolution. Consciousness and its flow has an order. One order is as above, so below. What is within is so without. Quantum physics has completely proven this. On the right is the structure of the atom. On the left is a structure of the universe, which is considered to be an 8-dimensional crystal lattice. When you take a look of how this looks in 3D, we can see a pattern emerge which simply looks like the one on the right, which is the atom. Think about the fascinating science and the revelation where our ancients understood this structure of the universe and built temples to show these patterns. When we take this particular 8D crystal and project it on 2D, this is where mandalas make sense. Imagine the ability to harness this energy by creating houses, hospitals, and other structures that can help this energy flow inside us. And this code also exists in the yantras in India. We can understand so much by decoding. For example, the temple, when viewed from the top, is exactly harnessing this energy through this geometry. What seems unseen is what we need to focus on. The ancients understood from 8D or 8 dimension, this energy ultimately becomes a 4-dimensional energy and then moves into the 3 dimensions. This 4-dimensional energy is called the hypercube. When you project the hypercube on 2 dimensions on the surface, now we'll be able to decode the information in ancient science. The hypercube also answers the biggest question on Christ consciousness. If you unfold the hypercube into the cubes, you'll see a pattern emerge, which is just the same picture on the right. There are cycles on cycles on cycles, and we just need to merge our thinking, our innovation, and our application in alignment with these cycles. When Earth and Venus dance together in the sky, in a cycle of 8 years, a pattern emerges, which is a pentagram. When you take circles and mathematics and then map them on a chart, it creates a pentagonal shape. This shows that what is above, our mathematics, our music, everything in nature is harmonious. Only we have lost our way. But many people understand this wisdom. Those who understand the energy of Venus, for example, of beauty, wealth, structure, have created logos to harness this energy. What we call spooky science is not spooky at all. Aren't we in a week or a weekly cycle of 7 days, and the days of the week are nothing but planetary energies? Now let's look at how consciousness moves. Consciousness moves in cycles with a certain order called as within, so without. This is exactly the flow of blood in our heart. And this is called the technique of implosion. When you map these 4 chambers of the heart and the flow of consciousness and blood, we get the shapes over here, which are the Celtic knots. Imagine the power in building devices based on this idea, based on these shapes, because they can harness the power of consciousness and be aligned with it. These cycles exist within micro and macro. For example, when you study history and map important events, we will see cycles repeat. Some of these cycles have cycles within them, they in turn have cycles within them. That's why we are at a juncture of a massive change for humanity. As the 45-year cycle shoots up from 2005, this will usher in a massive technology revolution. But we need to be prepared for this revolution, and that means that we have to align ourselves with this wisdom of consciousness. Rather than obstructing it, the ancients aligned with it, and that is why they created structures, which is temples that cannot be replicated at all. But the question is, why did they build temples? Because they understood the power of the human body. The human body was the temple. It was the macrocosm and the microcosm. It is the atom and the universe. What is the study of the human body? It's called anatomy. Notice the word atom in it. This energy flows into all living and non-living creatures based on ratios, and these ratios manifest in structure. The same structure that is found in the human body is also found in the DNA. The same energy of the planets that we find outside is also in our psyche. The Egyptians put all this in code. The 64 white stars in the body of Nut, the woman, is showing us how the energy from the stars ultimately connect with our DNA, the 64 codon rings. Some of the temples have gone further in explaining how the external are the 64 cosmic archetypes, and inside are these 64 codon rings, which are simply the model of I Ching that we have forgotten. Imagine how the temple on the left is exactly the same as the 64 codon rings in our DNA. This brings us to an immense amount of realization that what is in the universe as consciousness is in the temple, and these temples have the wisdom to show us how to connect with ourselves and our DNA. This is where we have to understand that separation is the real problem. Oneness is the solution. Just being intellectually advanced is not going to help us, because the mind will always cheat us just like this. We have to merge the heart and the mind together. The mind alone will always deceive us. As we move to an age of AI, we should be thinking that AI is going to be conscious, and that is completely wrong, because AI will never be able to feel what it is to be a human. It will never have the intuitive elements that Steve Jobs spoke about. Now it is the time to understand this wisdom, bring both sides together like a namaste. The true union of what is the macrocosm, the microcosm, and ourselves through true reflection and self-awareness. As we align ourselves with the fractality of time and the cycles of consciousness, this will bring us into a future where the future depends upon the wisdom of the past. The problem is that we don't have wisdom today. We are drowning in information. And that is the reason we have to synthesize this wisdom. Project Eternity is that organization that brings all this wisdom into oneness together for the next evolution of humanity and businesses. I hope you liked our presentation. Feel free to reach out to us because we will.